My name is Stefanie Osofsky, part Saruti, and I'm really grateful to be here with y'all today. I am a future truck driver. I'm an artist and a writer, and ultimately and most importantly in my heart, I'm a student of life and death. I've been studying end of life for a number of years now. I've trained with death doulas and hospice and with end of life for beloved pets. And it shapes my life in a really beautiful way to turn my attention towards this thing that we're all going to do someday. But we're here to talk about ritual. And in order to do that, I have to talk to y'all about grief and loss. But that also means that I have to talk to you about joy and love. They are holding hands. It's really special to me that we're in this location today because I am from here. I went to Lake Worth High. I used to go to summer camp at the Lake Worth Playhouse when it was on Lucerne, and we would walk to the 7-Eleven and get Slurpees. And I've had underage beverages at Brogues. So much of my story is on these streets. And I've been so resistant my whole life to the fact that I'm from here. I've wanted to leave for as long as I can remember. And I think I'm finally coming to a place where I understand why I'm still here and have a lot of reverence in my heart for the land and the ecosystems that have raised me. The story I want to tell y'all today, which was the first time in my life that I experienced ritual and really got what was happening. And it happened at that beach where I used to go on all of my weekends and after school and just live the dream coastal teenager life. So the day was September 13th, 2007, which was my 17th birthday. And I spent a perfect day at that beach with my friends. And perfect days are so rare. Or maybe our ability to recognize a perfect day is rare, and rarer still is to know that one is unfolding while it's happening. The sun was its brightest, the sky was its clearest, all my friends were there. We grilled, we swam, we frolicked, flirted, gossiped. It was just, my heart sang, I'll never forget it. And that perfect day would change my life forever and teach me that it is absolutely possible for two things to be true at the same time. So I spend this beautiful day at the beach with my friends, and sometime right around golden hour, we were just in the shallows of the water, and a huge school of fish leapt out of the water like a million diamonds glistening in the sun. It was just, it took our breath away. At 17 years old, we were all like, this is amazing and special, and something is speaking to us. So it was beautiful. It was perfect. I don't know what else to say. It was a perfect day in my life. And it was supposed to end with my friends and I going to the movies. I'm sure most of you will remember the time where AOL Instant Messenger was important to our lives. It was important to my life. And that was how I was chatting with all my friends that night to plan what movie we were going to go to. I couldn't tell you what movie we saw because we didn't. Somehow in that ecosystem on my screen, I started getting a lot of news. And I would come to learn that my best friend's brother was killed in a car accident that day in Tallahassee. I'm speechless because there are no words for that, and 17 years later, it feels as as much as it felt then. I remember my mom driving me to my friend's house that night and wading through the sea of elders who were keening, just wailing in their grief, to find my friend sitting in her room, still in her ballet unitard, her head down like this. I can see it as clear as I see my friend sitting right here. Shout out to Tiffany Lanier, by the way. Appropriately so, the death of a young person rocks a community. But there was something special about this guy. He just exuded aliveness, and he was beautiful. God, he was so beautiful. He was just deserved all of the awe and wonder that he elicited in people. And everyone I knew mourned. I felt the grief of my people like a wet blanket over all of us. I remember going back to school for the first time after he died, and it was as if the walls and the stairs held that grief with us. And it's impossible to ignore how utterly beautiful it can be to be part of hurting so much with so many other people. His wake was standing room only. And the only sign that anything had happened was this tiny little mark on his forehead. And this was the first time in my life I really got that there was something existential to contemplate. And this event did that for me. I was like, where did he go? Where did that aliveness go, that vitality, that essence? Where is it? And I think I've probably spent all my life since then trying to find that out. But there were a few things in particular that followed his death that were really a privilege to be a part of. He was a surfer. And as any of you who are water people might be familiar, there's a ritual of paddle outs that follow the death of someone from that community. And with about 50 people, we all paddled out on this beach. Threw flowers into the water. I believe a bottle of Jim Beam made its rounds as we all tried to balance on these boards. And it was the first time I saw as ritual. By the way, I don't know if I'll use these slides at all. Is that okay? Cool. It's amazing how memory lives so clearly in our hearts and in our bodies, and I truly can close my eyes and see myself in this unfolding in my life story. But I distinctly remember trying to keep myself afloat in the water, but feeling so much like I was part of something. Period. Like I was part of something. And that, well, here we are. When Jenny sent me the definition of what CreativeMornings defined ritual as, a distinction was made that I think is important. And it's between ritual and routine. Routines are the good things that get us through business as usual. your morning coffee or a podcast you listen to on the way to work. Not that those things all can't be full of meaning in their own way, but ritual is for when business is not as usual. And there needs to be something else to mark that something has changed. And I think culturally we're really lost there. We have this vast amnesia about the ways we once honored and remembered things. And I understood that day that ritual is how you bear the unbearable. It does not fix anything. I'm so sorry to spoil that. It doesn't fix anything. What it does do, in the best of times, is instill in us the ability to carry what cannot be fixed. And I think that is an essential and beautiful part of our living. You know, we have to include all of it. And our inability to do so, I think, is leaving us feeling adrift out here. I'm going to take a breath after telling that story. The word ritual etymologically links to the word rite, which leads its way through a long road of how language evolves to suggesting something that is carefully observed or counted. Ritual is how we acknowledge and count. That we say, this happened, and I am changed. And I like to think of ritual as a vehicle that transports us between worlds. Because ultimately, all rituals, I think, represent some kind of threshold, a place where you're going from one place to another and you're sort of in that liminal thing. And ritual is just one way, you know. But it can be as simple as drinking your morning coffee thoughtfully and reading a poem, or as elaborate as grieving the loss of a teenager and paddling out to sea. But the point is that ritual becomes real when we make meaning out of things. Everything is sacred. There's a slide in here that says that somewhere. There you go. Everything. And attuning to just being thoughtful of this gives you the ability to really create meaning out of any kind of moment. I'll share another story, a tender one too, with the permission of my partner, who doesn't know what story I'm going to tell. There was a time in our relationship where we weren't sure what was going to happen, how it was going to work. We call it the mess, which is a 4-letter word I'm pretty sure I'll tattoo across my knuckles someday, because it's a great teacher in my life. And we weren't living together during this time. And every night, I would sit on the floor and I would play The Book of Love by Peter Gabriel over and over and over and over and over again. And I would light candles and I would take some kind of oil and anoint my feet, which seems so simple. But in a time where you're not sure of anything, when your heart is shattered, there's something there for us in that tending, that willingness to be intent upon. I'm an etymology nerd, and that's what tend means, to be intent upon. And I didn't have an answer. Nothing about sitting in that little spot told me everything's gonna be okay. It was often the opposite. I wept. But you get to call on what's sacred to you, to see you across these thresholds of unknown. Ritual is not for when you're sure. It is for when you don't know. And I think that is the best way to be sure that you're arriving with some level of reverence. I think it's hard to be in reverence and in awe when you're sure. So ritual asks us to be unsure, but to show up anyway, and still, and with it all. A lot of you asked about the picture that is out by our altar, and that is of my dog, Apollo, who died last year. I'm telling y'all hard stories today. But remember the truck driver, it's all good. And he, maybe more than anything else, has been my greatest teacher in this work. Because losing him was there's that speechlessness again, The bond between human and animals is so discredited. I have seen large men weep over a chameleon, over bunnies, roosters, ducks. When you work in pet end-of-life care, you really get to see how much people can love. And the love between Apollo and I was, what do you say? When you get so lucky. He was diagnosed with bladder cancer in 2021. So I had some time to anticipate that our story together in this form was coming to an end, which has to do with why I sought out morning altars, which is the lineage and pedagogy that I'm trained in under my teacher, Day Schildkret. And I just have to pause and say that I stand on the shoulders of so many giants in that lineage, and I wouldn't be standing right here without a bunch of people all over the world that I've mostly never met. But Apollo's death was one of those times where the only invitation is to accept reality exactly as it is, which might not be to your preference. It was not to my preference. But holding that thing in my heart to be intent upon carried me through an unbearable time. I wasn't sure about sharing this with y'all, but I'm going to. Great. Wow, 20 minutes goes by insanely fast. Hold on, I lost my train of thought. That's okay. Thanks for keeping me on time, I appreciate it. All over the world, it is common practice to have a wake occur in the home. And I kept Apollo's body in the house for 3 days after he died. On ice, it's hot, and it was work. And that's another thing too, ritual often will cost you something. It's reciprocal. It's a relationship. And it asks us to be willing to give something. And it certainly may not always be easy. But you have to have a little bit of faith that you're tending to something greater than what you can see. And I have 2 stepchildren. And most people don't involve their kids in death. But as Apollo's body lay in my room on a beautiful blanket surrounded by flowers and leaves and the flora and fauna that held his life, and I watched my stepdaughter take flower petals and place them around his head, or my stepson place his hand on his body, I knew that this thing we were doing was going to be part of healing all of us. That instead of hiding it from them, their grief, their loss was in the room too, and they could touch it and be seen in it. That's the whole thing right there. And let me not leave here today without saying this. The transformative aspect of ritual is that you are seen. Is that as you cross into something unknown, it's held by an altar, by a friend, by a community such as this one. And man, that piece is so important, how much we need each other, and how being seen by someone else, by something else, makes us real. And the truest thing I remember is how absolutely full of love I felt as I said goodbye to my dearest, dearest, dearest friend, with his body still in my home, with the people that I love tending to his transition. And everything is sacred. And your life is yours to make meaning out of. And what I hope you glean from this moment is that you have that ability and that power all the time to infuse meaning into your life. That the earth is here, and she wants to hold us in these moments, and how much we need each other to get to wherever it is that we're going. But I hope this morning inspires y'all to make it beautiful and to open your heart to all of it, because it is beautiful. And this is why we're here, I think. So, in closing, I'd like to lead you all through a short little moment, if that's okay. And I'm going to read some words that a friend of mine wrote. And as you all get settled and close your eyes, I'll invite you to reflect on the altar you just made. Hold that image in your mind's eye. Something that didn't exist a couple hours ago. Something that in its current form needed each and every one of your hands. And I'd like you to imagine that the space in the center of the altar, where it's full of rich, fertile soil, is a place for you to lay down something that is meaningful to you. Think of it as sacred because it is sacred, because you all contributed to it being sacred. And notice that holding, that carrying that the altar is doing for us involves so many other beings, so many, not just the human hands that played a part today, but to the fishtail palm whose leaves we borrowed, the plumeria tree, the sea grapes, the remains of pine cones after being fed on by eastern gray squirrels. And know that all of that is holding you and seeing you in whatever this moment is, whatever is being laid to rest in this ground. As this day unfolds, I offer gratitude to the east, the place of the rising sun, the place of beginnings after the long night, the place of agony and ecstasy found in rebirth, the place of new, tender growth. Thank you for giving me your strength to sprout, survive, and now begin to thrive. I offer gratitude to the south, the place of power, the place where the sun shines her brightest, the place where all things are seen, the place of fire and water, who each cleanse in their own way. Thank you for giving me your inspiration for revolution, expansion, and adventure. I offer gratitude to the west, the place of harvest, the place of mourning and abundance, the place where the mother is lost and found, the place of furred creatures who walk the path of presence. Thank you for giving me your sorrow and sweetness in equal measure. I offer gratitude to the north, the place of cold waters and deep contemplation, the place where the wolf howls and where the stag walks, the place where the stars burn their brightest, the place where the darkness of the ancestors offers us rest and support to dream once again, so we may prepare for another season of magic and movement. And in every experience, wherever my feet may walk, but to this place most of all, I thank you for my perfect life. I thank you for my perfect life. Thank you for my perfect life. Thank you for holding me, teaching me, growing me, changing me, loving me. Thank you.